Well, greetings. It's the top of the hour, and thank you for joining us for the opening session for the International Association for the Study of Traditional Environments 2021 conference. My name is Mark Gillum. I'm the president of IASTE and a professor of architecture and landscape architecture at the University of Oregon. And I want to thank all of you for joining us, our panelists and attendees, in this first virtual conference for IASTE. This is an unusual world that we are in, and we certainly appreciate everybody taking time out of their schedules to join us. As you all know, we were hoping to do this in person, and I certainly would have preferred to be in Nottingham, at Nottingham Trent University, to do this in person, but COVID-19 has intervened, so we could not do that. In fact, we were desperately trying to make this an in-person event, knowing how much most of us would prefer to be in person rather than to do this virtually. So we tried a couple of times, we rescheduled twice, but it just wasn't in the cards to hold this as an in-person event in this cycle. As you know, COVID-19 continues to ravage the world. And as probably you heard yesterday, the EU just changed their rules for the US folks. So who knows what the world holds, but we wanted to proceed with this conference, given all of the great input that we received, especially all the great input from many of you as attendees. Your abstracts were fantastic. You really responded to the theme of the conference, this idea of virtual traditions. And I must say it is a bit ironic that we're holding our virtual traditions conference virtually. Certainly we didn't anticipate that when we were writing the call, but sometimes the world changes what one wants to do. So what we're going to be doing is thinking about how to work virtually. I want to, right at the beginning here, thank a few of the staff members who made this transition happen. It certainly was not easy. Dr. Hisham Issa is the secretary of IASTE, and really Dr. Issa led the effort in converting what was going to be an in-person event at Nottingham to this virtual event. So Dr. Issa, thank you very much. He has been assisted by an amazing staff. Dr. Lindsay Deaton has worked as the IASTE coordinator and has done a fantastic job helping out. Dr. Adnya Sarasmita has helped as well from University of Washington. And then our local team, who will be introducing themselves, has been a tremendous help. So everybody from the University of California, Berkeley, University of Oregon, NTU has been fantastic. As many of you know, the International Association for the Study of Traditional Environments was founded in 1988 at the University of California, Berkeley, at our inaugural conference. And throughout its 33 years of existence, hard to believe, it's been around 33 years, the association has emerged as one of the leading interdisciplinary forums for scholars from various disciplines and various countries to get together and exchange ideas and share research related to themes of traditional dwellings and settlements. The association has really concerned itself with the cross-cultural and comparative understanding of traditional dwellings and settlements as an expression of informal cultural connections. Also, we've been concerned about the role that globalization and place has put pressure on traditional dwellings and settlements, and what does that mean? So with many individuals and institutions from all over the world, we have pursued four main activities, and these activities really try and engage scholars and practitioners where they're at, and we try and identify themes that can be of interest to our participants. First, we have this conference. Every 2 years, we host a conference. This has slipped. Originally, it was intended for 2020, but because of COVID-19, we slipped a bit. But generally, every 2 years, we have an in-person conference, and our intent is to return to an in-person conference after this one. These are always hosted by a host university, and we definitely want to thank Nottingham Trent University for the effort that they've put into this as our host. So that is one major event. Part of the conference, as you know, is the abstracts. The abstracts are published in Traditional Dwellings and Settlements Review. Also, we have a working paper series. TDSR, Traditional Dwellings and Settlements Review, is a peer-reviewed academic publication, and it's in its 32nd year. The IASTE Working Paper Series, this is not mandatory, but we love it when scholars who are presenting their papers at this conference or prior conferences actually put papers together. I'd say about half of the scholars do that. Those papers go into the Working Paper Series. We have more than 1,500 individual papers in our Working Paper Series. And much of this you can get from our website. We put most of this on the website. We also have an outreach program, which includes dissemination of general videos, documentary videos for public television and the like. As in past ISD conferences, we have invited scholars, professionals, and practitioners from architecture, architectural history, urban design, art history, anthropology, archaeology, folklore, geography, history, the list goes on and on. We want to be interdisciplinary, but we invite folks to submit what their research is related to our theme, in this case, virtual traditions, and then they're able to share their ideas. To put the context of ISD's history and its previous conferences into position, I'd like to introduce Professor Nazar Al-Sayed, who is the ISD co-founder and the ISD's past president. Professor Al-Sayed, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. I say good morning, although we are working virtually, so in a sense, it doesn't really make sense to say good morning, but I have to say that because for me, it is actually 4 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you, Mark. It is indeed a pleasure to be with you virtually, since we cannot be in Nottingham as planned. ISD conferences have always been a central part of the association's intellectual and interactive activities. Like other scholarly associations that run conferences, we always try to meet. But I think the difference between us and other associations is that we always have a theme. And believe it or not, the 500-word call for abstracts that all of you responded to usually takes about 6 months or so to write and refine. And it involves many individuals to basically get it in its final form. It falls upon me to ground the theme of this year's conference in the longer intellectual history of the association, particularly because a good third of the attendees this year's conference have not been to previous ISD conferences. Tradition has multiple forms, manifestations, and influences that shape the process used to produce, transform, and preserve built environments in sync with social and cultural change. Throughout its history, ISD has helped shape the discourse around the social, political, economic aspects of tradition. Our previous conferences have attempted to examine some of the more persistent notions in the field of traditional and vernacular environments. For example, our 1988 and 1990 inaugural conferences held at Berkeley, California, challenged the popular dichotomy of first world, third world, and identified means through which the interconnectedness of these spheres affect the production of the built environment. Our 1992 conference, which was held in Paris, tackled the conflicts of development versus tradition through exploring the cultural ecology of vernacular environments. In Tunis in 1994, we examined the themes of value in tradition and questioned the utility of research on traditional settlements. And in 1996, we investigated the interconnectedness of identity and tradition and the impact of globalization on the form of the built environment and our ability as scholars to read it. The 1998 conference held in Cairo, Egypt, dealt with a global phenomena that we termed the manufacture of heritage and the consumption of tradition. And it actually arose from the membership's concern with the increasing commercialization of heritage sites. In 2000, in Trani, Italy, and in a somewhat prophetic manner that preceded the events of 9/11, we organized the conference titled The End of Tradition. At the conference, many members spoke of the clash of civilizations and the clash of fundamentalisms, both paradigms, and in fact forecasted the implications for the production of the built environment in an age of increasing instability. In Hong Kong in 2002 and in Dubai in 2004, we explored the boundaries of tradition and the idea of post-traditional environments as spaces that unsettle the historically developed or assumed relationship between place and meaning in a post-global world. In 2006, the conference in Bangkok, Thailand, dealt with the spread of hyper traditions a theme we actually continued on, particularly because of the events of the world at the time, in 2008 in Oxford, England, where we also interrogated the relationship between fundamentalisms and traditions and the emergence of a different kind of global engagement that was simply sharply at odds with the visions of liberal multicultural globalization. In 2010 and 2011, and in the meetings in Beirut, Lebanon, and in Portland, Oregon, we considered traditions' relationship to utopia a myth. And in Kuala Lumpur, Indonesia, Malaysia, in 2014, we asked whose traditions are of concern, by whom, and to what end. In Kuwait, in 2006, we tackled the question of what legitimates certain traditions and under what circumstances are they sustained. Our latest conference in 2008, the last in-person conference we had, which was actually held in Coimbra, Portugal, we examined the ways in which the political and the traditional intertwined, and we looked at different forms of governance structures that facilitate these connections. Tradition and traditions have often been conceived as a place-based and a temporally situated concept, a static legacy of the past or heritage owned by certain groups of people. But after more than 3 decades of studying this particular arena, we now know from all of the previous conferences that these normative discourses cannot be further sustained in this global term. Hence, and for more than a decade, many of us have defined tradition not as a legacy of a certain past, but rather as a living and ever-changing dynamic project to understand the past for the purposes of the present and the future. The events of the past 18 months, including the pandemic and the lockdowns that followed, have required the recalibration of all forms of communication and scholarship. Some peoples and nations have used the current situation to advance specific agendas and sometimes even conspiracy theories. Although many countries have successfully managed to combat the spread of the virus, including vaccinating their populations, the global situation is still far from stable. Meanwhile, and to be able to function, businesses and universities, recognizing how the world of ideas and the world of action must remain interconnected, have adopted new models of virtual collaboration using a variety of digital platforms, just like the one we are using today. We wish we could claim that our call for papers issued in 2019 for this IASTI conference, originally scheduled for fall of 2020, under the theme of virtual traditions, was prophetic. We can't claim that, like we could not claim what happened also with us in the conference called The End of Tradition back in the year 2000. The reality is that we just observed contemporary currents, and we recognize that the connection between the real and the virtual worlds has become not only essential, but mutually constitutive, and to even some extent irrevocable. Hence the theme of our conference today. I will let my colleague, Professor Mohammed Gamal Abdelmenam of Nottingham Trent University, the local conference director, to elaborate further on the conference theme. I wish you a very successful conference and hope to see you in its many virtual rooms. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Nazar Sayad, and thanks, Professor Mark Gillam, for entrusting Nottingham Trent University to work with you on hosting such conference. I wish first to start by welcoming both of you, Professor Mark Gillam, the president of the IASTI, and Professor Nazar Sayad, the co-founder and the past president. Welcome, Dr. Isa, the Secretary General, and all the IASTI board. Welcome to all our conference participants, wherever you are on planet Earth. We know that we are crossing different time zones and different continents. I hope it's not so inconvenient for you to attend our conference today. First, I wish to welcome you to the great city of Nottingham. We wish to welcome you in person to that city, which sits over 660 medieval caves infused with the mythical stories of Robin Hood. We wish to host our conference at NTU or Nottingham Trent University campuses, and we try to do everything possible. As Professor Gillam and Professor Sayad mentioned, we even delayed the conference twice booked a number of venues, and even curated our exhibition, Strata Layered Histories and Emerging Futures at the glamorous Nottingham Castle, with the hope to host our private conference reception and private tours. But as you all know, COVID-19 had different ideas. So here we are. Welcome to the most standing tradition in academia today, as ironically as it is. It's a virtual conference. Who would have thought the virtual would become a tradition, or the academic traditions and pedagogies would have been manifested through virtual platforms? The choice of the conference topic, virtual traditions, the transience of tradition in changing geographies and global landscapes. This was a little 4 years ago. It was, as Professor Gillam and Sayad mentioned, it was far from being prophetic. It reflected our understanding of the evolution of dominant streams of communications and social and cultural engagement over the past 2 decades. As traditions embody values, cultural practices, and inherent educational processes across space and time, they were always true to their age and a mirror that reflects, amongst other things, radical transformations of societies and cultures. Tradition, however, is evolutionary, dynamic, and resilient, that helps us through challenging times. As technology and virtual communications increasingly dominate our daily life, it was inevitable that tradition, culture, and education would follow, or at least adapt. As a keen participant in the previous ISTU conference, the notion of tradition was tackled, as Professor Sayad mentioned, from multiple perspectives. However, there was a feeling that the small matter of digital technology was a little overdue. Touched upon sporadically, but hardly debated at depth. And this is where our thoughts, ideas, and research met with the ambition and trajectory of ISTU conferences. Having flagged the notion of virtual traditional reciprocal relationship for an afternoon coffee with Professor Sayad in San Francisco over below 3 years, or a little less than 4 years ago, and then with Professor Gillam, it was welcomed to my delight. When the call for paper was first released over 3 years ago, people wondered what we meant by virtual traditions, what we hope to achieve. Having been through the past 2 years, I'm not sure many people would question it anymore. Through our research at Nottingham Trent University and the Center for Architecture, Urbanism, and Global Heritage, we look at tradition and heritage as part of the present and future of communities, whether they are rural or urban, whether they are national or global. We look at how traditional practices could be preserved, adapted, and continue to inform the future of communities and young generations, not as history or past memory, but as embedded cultural knowledge and socio-spatial systems of living and livelihoods. Both technology and tradition bridge space and time. They are not inherently contradictory. They could and should rather be complementary. At Nottingham Trent University, we are supported by the university's strategic research team on global heritage and lead the university research peak on cultural heritage research. They are 2 pioneering research models, as you will hear from our Pro-Vice Chancellor shortly. And this takes us to the conference theme and topics today, virtual traditions. So why virtual traditions and why now? Contemporary societies are increasingly confronted with new forms of communication that are mobile, digital, and remote. And hence, the very notion of traditions is undergoing a rhetorical transition according to the new global economy and boundaryless conditions of citizenship. With the predominance of mobile communication, social media, and online interaction, the terms virtual and tradition are no longer at opposite ends of cultural discourse. Virtual space is developing sociocultural norms that dictate everyday life as we are here today, while built environments adapt to virtual events, spaces, and gatherings. In planning this conference, we wanted to explore and debate how the mutual influences between the virtual and the traditional reconfigure new structures of communities, societies, and cities, extending and connecting built spaces. Universally enforced national lockdowns and travel restrictions went a long way to somehow or somewhat demonstrate this emerging relationship beyond anyone's expectations. In an era defined by social media, online interactions, and virtual knowledge exchange, new agents manipulate traditions, values, myth, borders, and even the legitimacy of the built environment in virtual space. Scientific innovation, data mining, algorithms, and spatial and digital modeling have thus led to new methods of interpretations and mechanisms of decision-making that force a reconsideration of the link between buildings, people, culture, and its consumers. To this extent, the past 2 years were eye-opening and fast-tracked away a decade or two of progress and down this route. But more importantly, new traditions, new practices, and cultural norms emerged that brought people to an actual engagement in the virtual space, as we did for this conference. In a similar manner, traditions in the built environment need to be accessible and open to similar exchange, through which its knowledge, understanding, and skills cross space and time to educate and share audience from different parts of the world, or to ensure they do not vanish or disappear with similar act of disappearance or destruction, whether natural or man-made. Interestingly, our lives now are getting ironically more remote, yet more static and less mobile at the same time. To get in-depth, insightful, and interdisciplinary perspectives on such novel intellectual debate, we invited participants to revisit the notion, concepts, and practices of tradition at a time when virtual and mobile interaction is increasingly dictating the terms of everyday life, at home, at work, and in the public sphere. To do that, this was pursued mainly in 3 tracks, which were demonstrated the tracks of the conference. The first one, theorizing the virtual and the traditional in the built environment. This track addresses the engagement with and reproduction of tradition and heritage in contemporary, digitally driven societies and smart cities, highlighting ethical, technological, social, and intellectual concerns. Papers in this track, as you will hear over the next 4 days, examined how spatial analytics, digital display, and virtual campaigns influence traditional practices of architecture, planning, urban design, and decision-making. They attempt to explore how notions of digital space and virtual engagement altered understanding and perception of physical and spatial qualities of built environments, and how the new digital tools influence new practices of policing, surveillance, and the making of public opinions. In track 2, which we call the socio-spatial traditions of everyday life in changing landscapes, papers attempted to explore how cultures, societies, and institutions reshape their identities through varying interpretations of tradition in the natural, built, and ecological landscapes. They examined everyday socio-cultural practices of production and consumption of space by addressing physical modes of living, work, and recreation in contemporary urban and rural contexts. Some papers analyze the intellectual debate on the acceptance of new traditions and the appreciation of alternative heritage in contemporary societies. The third track, tradition, space, and professional practice in the built environment at times of transition, addresses the challenges and processes of projects, plans, actions, and investigates the way tradition informs the paradigm shifts in the professions. Professions such as architecture, planning, cultural heritage, and conservation. Papers in this track engage traditions in real-life challenges of practice and decision-making, Perhaps the main question that participants tried to answer was how practitioners can perceive, study, and respond to the peculiarities of tradition at this time of global change. We were really excited about the number of papers and abstracts submitted, and we have a very interesting debate coming over the next 40 days. We, of course, wanted to have you here at Nottingham Trent University, and I hope you enjoy the conference. We tried to provide several introductory videos on the city, our campuses, and Nottingham Castle. And even we provided videos for the specially curated Strata exhibition film for your exclusive viewing. We try to do our best to really give you a close feel as possible to being in Nottingham and at Nottingham Trent University. We hope you do come and visit us whenever you get a chance. We would love to welcome you. It was an incredible journey to work on this conference with the IST team who have worked around the clock, and we are grateful to our supporting university conference facilities and teams at NTU. I look forward to attend and enjoy the stimulating debates and discussion over the next few days. Now I will turn to Professor Killian Ryan, our Pro Vice Chancellor of International at Nottingham Trent University, who wanted to welcome you to the conference and kindly recorded his address to you. So I will share my screen to listen to his address. Do you hear the voice? Just want to make sure everybody's hearing the voice.
Not yet. No audio there.
No audio? Sorry.
He didn't play the video, Jamal, so play the video. The video was
right.
stopped.
Yes. So please let me know if there is no voice, okay?
Okay. No audio.
No audio.
Apologies.
You are all.
There we go. That's better.
Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, or evening, as appropriate to wherever you are. You are all very welcome. My name is Professor Killian Ryan, and I am Pro Vice Chancellor International here at Nottingham Trent University. And I would like to offer a sincere and very warm welcome to Professor Mark Gillam, the President of the International Association of the Study of Traditional Environments, all our keynote speakers, and you, the participants in the conference. It goes without saying that we were really keen to host you at Nottingham, and the conference was delayed from last year's result in the hope that we could facilitate an in-person conference in our fantastic city and our university campus. Alas, it was not to be, but I'm delighted we could hold this virtual conference anyway. I would like to start by describing Nottingham Trent University, which is 178 years old this year. It was founded on the traditions of the city, the linen industry, and the focus on art and design in the creation of both the linen patterns, but also in the machinery that built it. We've come a long way since then, and we are now a large anchor institution, deeply rooted in the traditions of this historic city and region, but with a strong international outlook and span of activity. With over 30,000 students, nearly 1,000 of whom are doctoral students, and who hail from over 110 countries around the world. We have a staff base of nearly 3,000, 4 physical campuses into which we've made substantial investments. And we have now reached turnover of nearly £750 million a year in the last year. The quality of our teaching and the graduate level outcomes from our students led to the award in 2017 of a gold standard in the National Teaching Excellence Framework, only one of 25 universities to achieve that distinction. In 2015, we were awarded a prestigious Queen's Anniversary Prize for Sustained Excellence and Innovation with Impact for our research in the areas of safety and security of citizens and society. Between 2017 and 2019, we were awarded 3 University of the Year awards by different bodies, including the Times Higher Education Award, the Guardian, and the Times Sunday Times. But now to the subject of today's international conference, Virtual Traditions, which aligns with the university's vision and ambition in driving international research in cutting-edge areas of cultural heritage. Our focus on cultural heritage is strategic and looking into the future of our shared heritage, whether it is ancient world heritage sites, medieval paintings, classic artwork, or our historic towns and traditional communities. Apologies. At NTU, we have an extended expertise in education, research, and enterprise in cultural heritage from different disciplines, from history, architecture, art, science and technology, heritage and museums, and others. This promoted the establishment of the strategic research theme in global heritage amongst the university's 5 strategic research themes. And we have funded, since 2017, 40 academic staff and researchers in this area. In the last year, we selected cultural heritage as the university's first research peak in recognition of the outstanding world-leading research and achievements in this area. Our research on heritage and traditions is always looking into the future, how to record and preserve our cultural heritage and traditions for future generations. We also acknowledge the roles of techniques in helping us develop novel methods, techniques, and environments to preserve the heritage better, but more importantly, to make it accessible to people and the communities that are frequently left behind. We all acknowledge that cultural and built heritage and community traditions are representative of the creativity and genius of humanity. Each heritage site and each community embody the culture, history, values, and beliefs that contributed to building it, be it intangible, like culture, poetry, literature, or tangible buildings, art, or artifacts. Whenever heritage, tangible or intangible, is lost, it is irreplaceable value goes as well as cultural and human production take away from our culture, history, and identity. Our research here at NTU stands apart through its deep connections with and profound responses to the real challenges faced by the communities in our city, country, and region, and beyond, to a global impact that changes both lives and the world we all share. Nottingham Trent University has an impressive record of world-leading research, innovations, and state-of-the-art technologies that inform international institutions, governments, and provide impact that changes the fate and future of several cultural heritage sites, materials, artifacts, and museums from across the globe. Our university-wide research theme, Global Heritage, Science, Management and Development, includes, as I said earlier, over 45 academics and researchers from over 10 disciplines, working on scientific and research innovation in heritage preservation, practice, and sustainable development. Our projects reach out to locations as far as Australia, China, India, Vietnam in the east, and the United States and Latin America in the west. And we are delighted to welcome people from all over the world to this conference today. Our researchers have worked and helped governmental institutions and heritage organisations to protect and conserve their collections and sites, such as the British Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum, governmental organisations in Ireland, Egypt, Oman, India, Iraq, Jordan, China, and others. Having looked at the conference programme, there are a wonderful lineup of panels and speakers who underline those themes and points of discussion. I'll be intrigued to hear the outcomes of the conference and its findings. I wish you the very best of intellectual debates, conversations and knowledge sharing during the 4 days of the conference. And while we won't have the social interactions that we might normally have, I'm sure that the engagement and the conversations that you have will be just as stimulating. I understand that you'll have a chance to see virtual material and videos about Nottingham Trent University and Nottingham Castle. And should you see them interesting, please do plan and come and visit us at your next opportunity. We would look forward to welcoming you. We always like to host colleagues and academics with like-minded research and vision. I wish you and the conference all the very best for the coming days. Thank you.
Gamal, you are muted.
All right. Thanks, Professor Ryan. And he wished to really share her gratitude to everybody and the IST and to our conference participants. Now I will move to our, I would like to welcome Dr. Andrew Wright, our Executive Dean of the School for Architecture, Design and Built Environment, who has been working with us on a daily basis to really make this conference and the theme and a reality. And he was supporting us from every day since even started and joined the IST board in Coimbra. Dr. Knight, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Gamal. Yes, this has been a long journey in many respects, and it takes me back 3 years when Gamal said to me, would you like to go to Portugal? Because there's a fantastic conference and we must get it at Nottingham Trent and I'd like your support. So I looked at it and it seemed rather interesting, and then managed to get flights booked and had a very, very enjoyable trip to Portugal, which was a beautiful place and also very warm. So I have very fond memories of being over there. But more than that, were the intellectual, I think, conversations that were had in that conference around history, architecture, society, and my particular interest, which is philosophy. And so when we went to the dinner and presented and we were awarded it, so I was actually incredibly excited about the fantastic conference we'd have here. But as everyone's already said, a small matter of a virus has put paid to it in that form. But in another way, it's given us an opportunity to embed the virtual theme of the conference in the medium of its transmission. So there we go. And so my job here today is to welcome you all as the Dean of the school to Nottingham Trent School of Architecture, Design and the Built Environment. Now, the school itself has over 4,000 students. So it's one of the largest schools of its type in the country. It's also quite diverse. It goes from civil engineering to product design through to building surveying and architecture. And in architecture itself, we teach from undergraduate to masters, the MArch degrees, and also PhDs. And a particular focus of the school is making sure that we produce graduates that get really good jobs. And I'm really proud to be Dean of this school because we've got the best graduate employability of the whole university. Our graduates are really highly sought after. Now, one of the reasons for that is there is an intellectual tradition underpinning the courses, because a university is not a university unless there's knowledge creation. And so researchers operating in the 3 centres contribute to that knowledge that underpins the curricula, whether it's in green technologies, work like Gamal's doing in heritage, or it's more broad in things like bridge design and the civil engineering side of things. So one of the things I try and do in the school is I won't go to all the areas of detail people actually research in, but I think what is important, and I think this conference embodies this, is the ethos or culture of a school. And so one of the things I really value is intellectual curiosity and also freedom to pursue those interests you have. So when I'm looking to appoint people to this school, it's very much the character of the person and the drive they have and the intellectual interests rather than their specific subject area. Because I think if society is to move on and universities are to remain relevant, you need intellectually inquisitive people that can take that knowledge, disseminate it through curricula, and also impact the world around us. And certainly some of the work that's being put together for the Strata exhibition at Nottingham Castle is testament to the way work in the school has impacted on both the local environment in terms of the fantastic historic buildings we have in Nottingham in the Lace Market, but also further afield in terms of the labyrinths of Egypt and the fantastic work we've done throughout the Middle East. So these things, I think, are important in terms of their application as well as the theoretical side. So I hope you'll enjoy this virtual world as it progresses through the next few days. I think there'll be opportunities to connect with people, have those conversations and move things in the right direction. So hopefully you could see me and hear me, and I'll now hand back to Gamal.
Thanks, Andrew. It's really, we are really grateful to help and support to bring this conference together. And I must acknowledge that you are a researcher, active researcher as well, and you will be joining some of the panels and sharing some.
Yes.
All right.
And paper, don't forget.
Yes, and delivering a paper, absolutely. So thanks a lot, everyone, and back to you, Mark.
Great. Thank you so much, Gamal. Thank you, Andrew. And it's been great working with you over the last 3 years to host this conference. And we do look forward to being there in person again at some point. Your university is beautiful and the town is amazing. So I certainly do encourage everyone to make the trip to NTU. At this point, we're going to transition to hearing from our Secretary General, Dr. Hisham Issa. Dr. Issa really did the heavy lifting, converting this session, this entire conference from an in-person event to a virtual event. So he's going to share with you a bit of history on that, and then we'll walk through how this works. So we have our keynote at the top of the hour. Dr. Issa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. So greeting everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm delighted that we are finally met virtually. I will quickly address the virtual conference challenges, process, and protocol. So bear with me, I'm gonna be very quick. Virtual conference planning present many of the same challenges as in-person meeting planning. And it was a huge effort to transform from in-person to a virtual in 5 weeks. One of these challenges is accessibility. How can the conference organizing committee ensure that everyone who wants to participate can go to the fullest possible extent? Moving to a virtual format improves accessibility. That's for two. For ISC members who cannot easily travel and waive the physical barriers of the in-person conference. Will it be successful? Another challenge that faced our organization was building a sustaining connection among ISC participants during the conference. In-person meetings tend to have plenty of informal networking and socializing opportunity during poster sessions, or meal times that can be difficult to replicate in virtual space. We created different meaningful virtual activities. You will note that in the program itself, between network breaking room, social room, and so on and so forth, to try to create such an environment that encourages the networking. And the first one of our networking break will start right after the keynote session in the conference first break. Also, the program platforms allow chatting among participants using the chat box in the attendee page, and please use it to know your fellow participant. Another challenge facing our virtual conference was the technology. It was a huge challenge, choosing which platform to use to manage our program, which platform to manage our events, and so on. However, in-person meeting also rely on technology, including AV system, online programs, and archiving services. We tested the 24 session in advance to ensure that there is no issue or question associated with the technology. Still, we might face some issue and technical problem, and I would like you to be patient. If this has happened, we are trying our best to have contingency plan. One of our contingency plan that we sent you guys from yesterday, actually, a direct link to the Zoom meeting that can be used if the conference program platform collapses for any reason. We have a dedicated team, a brilliant team actually, to handle issues that arise in much the same way that in-person meeting have volunteers or staff on site to help presenter load talks and troubleshoot AV problems. So reach out to me, to any one of our staff if you face any problem. We will work very hard to make it waived. Time zone was also another challenge that we don't normally face in the in-person meeting. We created a participant time zone matrix. Thanks for Dr. Adnia, who created that matrix that helped us to have an informed decision on the conference-based time zone with less after 12 a.m. and 4 p.m. impact. We are setting the program to allow you to adjust the program time to your local time. So please do that. If you don't know how to do it, please ask us. It's in the top bar of your program. Just adjust it to your local conference, and all the time of every session will be adjusted to your local time zone. The last challenge that we will touch on is creating and enforcing a code of conduct. Virtual conferences comes with different disadvantages. While code of conduct are becoming more common and expected, they may largely be written for the in-person gathering and interaction in mind. You can view the conference code of conduct in the information section of the visual conference program. Moving to the conference format itself, we have two forms of virtual session. A webinar, like the one that we have right now, and it accommodates most of the conference participant. It's a large format attendancy. We use the webinar for this opening session, concluding session, keynote speech, and any session that will accommodate the entire conference delegation. The second form of sessions are the meeting session, where we host smaller parallel presentation session that encourage interactions, and it's more personal for small group of attendees. For the webinar session, the participants are panelists and attendees. The attendees are not allowed to share the video and audio. They are allowed to raise hand, post question in the Q&A box. The session chair will have all questions and address them to the keynote speaker for any responses. The meeting session are more interactive, and attendees are host, co-host, and participant. Presenters will have access to video and audio as well as their screen. It is up to the session chair to decide the method to run the Q&A session, and he can choose between collecting questions through the chat box or give audio and video privilege for a participant. All sessions are recorded and will be available in the IST.org website later. You are allowed to leave a session, join another parallel session, and to come back to the same session. Participants will be placed in the waiting room, and the host will admit them regularly. Make sure your mic and video are off when you join a session. The IST organizing committee and staff will be available to you to help with any problem and challenges that might face during the conference. Finally, welcome to the IST 2021 conference. And back to you, Mark.
All righty. Thank you, Dr. Issa. Well, I'm going to share my screen here. And I'm sure you all can see this. I'd got to tell you, this is one of the disadvantages of these conferences. See, if you were with us, I'd be bringing some Voodoo Donuts from Portland, Oregon. We'd have Pete's Coffee from Berkeley, California, all at Nottingham. But we can't do that. I certainly miss the frenzied activity of running a conference in person. You know, making sure all the chairs are set up, managing the registration table, everybody trying to register at one time, ensuring all the audio visuals work of the particular area that we're in. We just can't be doing that right now, and that's something I miss. But we do look forward to being together virtually and learning from each other as much as possible. And that's one of the key aspects of the IASD tradition, is that we learn from each other. One of the reasons why we call them working paper series, for example, is because we hope that the scholars can take lessons and comments from all of us as they present, improve their work and revise their work, and then publish it somewhere, whether it's TDSR or another journal. Well, I'm going to take the last few minutes not sharing Voodoo Donuts or Pete's Coffee with you, but just kind of walking through the program so you have an understanding of how this is going to work over the next few days. So I'll go back to sharing my screen, but not the donuts here. And then we'll be opening up for our keynote talk. So just hang tight here. So what I'm going to do is go over to the program and how this works. Through Oxford Abstracts. All of you have been getting emails from Oxford Abstracts warning you of the next event. But basically, we have our sessions. We're in the opening remarks session, and you can see all the details of the opening session or each session, and then you can go down and join the session. So the conference itself is managed on Oxford Abstracts, and all the events are broadcast through Zoom. And these are the Zoom links. And then you can add comments in as you want. So then we have our keynote session. We'll be starting at the top of the hour with our keynote. And you can see here, I have it on Pacific time, and you can change the time zone to whatever you want. Up on top, a lot of good opportunities. You can filter the sessions any way you want. Now, we do have these 3 tracks. We left, just in honor of the idea that we were going to be in person, we left the names of the rooms where we were going to meet in Nottingham in here, but this is all virtual, of course. We'll be doing a networking break after the keynote session. If you could join us, that'd be great. Maybe we'll introduce ourselves, whoever decides to join, see what's happening with that. And then we'll be moving into our parallel tracks A, B, and C, where you can log in as you see fit and move back and forth. We'll have another break. This will be an open break. It won't be one where we get together. It'll be time for you to take your own time. Hopefully stretch your eyes, stretch your legs. And then we'll be going back into parallel sessions for the rest of today. Then tomorrow we start off at the top of the hour, the same time, 4 a.m. Pacific time, back to 3 parallel sessions, a short break, and then our second keynote session on day 2, then another break, parallel sessions, and then we have a special event, a virtual walking tour where we have some information that Gamal and the host university have provided regarding Nottingham and the work that they're doing at their incredible labs at NTU. And that will end day 2. Then day 3 on September 2nd, we'll again start out with parallel sessions. So just join the sessions as you see fit. A short break, and then our third keynote session, and you'll be able to just join in via Zoom. Another break, and then back to parallel sessions. Until the end of the day, we'll have our award ceremony. We're going to be awarding a series of best papers. So folks that have presented, there was a jury that looked at this, so you'll hear from the jury and identify who the award winners are. And then we'll end the day with the social setting. We'll have 3 rooms you can bounce back from, a Cairo room, London, and Hong Kong. There'll be hosted rooms where you can meet one another and share your thoughts. I'm really curious, certainly, how your lives have worked during this virtual world, especially from an academic perspective, what's worked and what hasn't worked, and maybe you could share some of your lessons from there. And then the last day, Friday, we'll open it up with parallel sessions. We'll have a break, and then our concluding plenary session. So that is the rough agenda of where we're headed. And right now, we are going to take a short break so you can stretch your eyes. I'm going to be putting on a clock here, so we'll get a 5-minute break. and then we'll return to the top of the hour for our keynote session. So please take 5, and then we'll return at the top of the hour.